Hey, I think we're live. Um, Thank you for joining me, Peter. It's
Of
great to
course.
have you on. I've been following you for a while and reading your tweets and all that stuff. And more recently you've got into the world of SWC, which
Yeah.
I'm pleased about, and I think the community is pleased about. So why don't you start uh, by giving us a bit more of an introduction, yeah, a bit about your background, but more about how did you get into Bitcoin, how did you get into MSTR, Metaplanet, and then now SWC.
Yeah. Long story short, I've worked in traditional finance for all my adult life, which up until this point's like 14 years. Um, I learned very briefly about Bitcoin during the last cycle in 2020, 2021, but like a lot of people, I was trying to probably chase the dragon and got into altcoins and lost a bunch of money. So I kind of like put it on the back burner, like just thinking like, oh, it's all a scam. Up until the fact that a couple years ago, well, early of last year, when the Bitcoin ETFs were announced through BlackRock and Fidelity, that reinvigorated my interest because, in my opinion, Fidelity and BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. Fidelity is the third. Vanguard's the second. But I thought that the number one and the number three largest asset manager in the world would not risk their financial reputation on a pump and dump or a scam. And so that, and also I had a couple colleagues who are Bitcoiners, not crypto stuff, but Bitcoiners. And so I just started debating with them, and they just recommended me a couple books. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and yeah, became a Bitcoiner early last year. And what really drew me to the Bitcoin Treasury space was my algorithm on YouTube knows me probably better than myself. So they showed me Quant Bros 1. So shout out to Jeff Wallen and Raquant for showing me, what MSTR was doing. That really was a very big light bulb moment for me, simply because I already knew how amazing Bitcoin was. But then for Bitcoin to be effectively the financial backbone of this new financial world that we're entering in was very, very exciting. So I just jumped head in. And then fast forward to Strategy World early this year in Orlando. That was my first chance to meet everybody, including Simon and Dylan. And yeah, when I spoke with Simon and Dylan, I was just very blown away on their conviction, their execution, but more importantly, like kind of their goals. Like, just to give you some perspective, at the end of last year for Metaplanet, there were around 1,700 Bitcoin. And then they were talking some crazy numbers at that point of they want 30,000 at the end of this year, and then 100,000 by the end of next year, and then 210,000 by the end of 2026. And I was like, how are they going to get there? But then if you look at like the execution and how they were the number one performing equity in 2024, uh, clearly they can execute. And so, yeah, I was part of the first wave to jump pretty heavy into Metaplanet. Just increased my conviction over time. But yeah, I've been in that space. And then I observed that one of the key metrics in the Bitcoin Treasury space is the fact that the community size is really important. The reason for that is because I have that traditional finance background. I know that I'm being generous here when I say that 95% of Wall Street don't fully understand Bitcoin, and 99.99% of Wall Street definitely do not understand Bitcoin treasury companies. So what that effectively means is that you need the first wave of investors need to be pretty hardcore Bitcoiners who most likely already have an existing Bitcoin treasury position in a stock like MSTR or Metaplanet. Now, when Smarter Web ran up, I don't know, to $6 or $7, I thought, oh, I missed that train. But here we are. Where I have the opportunity to dive in, and I was very impressed by the community growth. It's the third largest community behind MSTR and Metaplanet. Um, And so, yeah, and when I entered the community, it was very warm, very positive, and that only kind of contributes to, yeah, the MNAV, which is the thing that drives Bitcoin yield. So,
Okay, cool. Um, and by the way, to everyone who's watching, it's down to the people in the community that make it that way. So thank you very much for everyone that contributes. And if you haven't contributed, please get stuck in and make your first posts. Um, okay, so other than community, what was it about SWC?
yeah, um, I like to say that a good Bitcoin treasury company needs to have what I call the holy trinity of growth, but I've now recently revised that to, I don't know what to quite call it yet, but you need four major factors. Um, the number one factor is you having a laser focused CEO who has both great communication style in clarity as well as consistency, which Andrew does that in spades. I think he leads the Bitcoin treasury space in communication with the community. Um, and then you also have someone like Jesse Myers, who, while not Wall Street per se, he was a Bain consultant, so he has clearly a lot of financial knowledge. And he's also been a known quantity in the Bitcoin treasury space. So the first leg is a laser focused CEO who's good at communication and recruitment. Second leg is a Bitcoiner who can traverse the TradFi world with the Bitcoin world, and preferably having that person having a pretty significant social media following. And then only after clear communication and execution do they deserve a rabid community, which we are lucky to be a part of. Because again, it is that rabid retail community that gives us the ability to be above one MNAV to allow us to play the accretive dilutive game. But then recently, it came to my attention, especially, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, comes to my attention at this conference where I asked pretty much every single major Bitcoin treasury company CEO, what is the bottleneck for growth? And everyone had pretty much said the same thing, which is fundraising. So you need all four of those to execute very successfully. Yeah, and thus far I've been very impressed with Smarter Web in all four domains.
Awesome. So, um, based off the last couple of months, you got your opportunity to get back in or to get into SWC. Um, it's a sector-wide contraction. Um, Obviously, not that long ago, there were only a few companies that we could look at that on, primarily Metaplanet, really. Um, what's your thoughts on like the cyclical nature? Because a lot of people mentioned 4-month cycles for Metaplanet. Um, where are you at with that?
I don't know. I think we got to be a little bit careful of extrapolating past data into the future simply because there's so few data points. So, for example, like a lot of people would talk about the Bitcoin 4-year cycle. Well, yes, that is primarily driven through the halving cycles, but again, that's literally what, 3 data points, and we're in the middle of the fourth. So, yeah, you got to be very careful about drawing such broad speculation while so little data points. But that being said, I do see that these time frames are much, much shorter for Bitcoin treasury companies. Now, I don't, I would never recommend one way or another to hodl through it or trade it. You'll get cut both ways if you don't do it well. And if if Bitcoin is a speeding bullet train, then or if Bitcoin is, like a fast car, right? Then I would say Bitcoin treasury company is F1 racing. You got to be, you got to have very high skill, very deep knowledge, very high conviction, and especially if you can trade this well, I mean, you got to be some of the smartest, retail investors in the planet.
Okay, cool. And what about talking of cycles? What about Bitcoin cycles? Because
Mm.
uh, like you say, 3 data points, but you know that's all we've got to go on with Bitcoin. It's only been around 16 years.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that's going to change now?
I don't know. I don't really think too much about the cycles. I do know that out of all the data points, and this is something that Lynn Alden points out, is Bitcoin has a very high correlation to global liquidity. And so the one person I follow pretty closely on that is Michael Howe. I've written a thread about him. He comes from Solomon Brothers. He measures global liquidity very closely. Some people will just kind of have a broad stroke and measure global liquidity using the M2 money supply, but he uses many more metrics. Yeah, some people can argue that he does this so that he can, pump his own company's research. But at the end of the day, everything that he said is very logical and data based. So yeah, if you were to follow the Bitcoin money supply, the liquidity supply to play the cycles, I'd follow Marco Howell, but I'm not particularly keen on trying to trade, these cycles too aggressively myself.
Sure. And what about if we did an assumption, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but an assumption that we're on a 4-year cycle-ish, um, what would be your end, like your cycle peak kind of prediction?
Yeah, I guess in America we say I'll plead the fifth on that because it's kind of similar to price predictions. You can't really win either way. Again, this is quoting Ben Workman. He says, investing is an individual sport. So I never play the price prediction game.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, what was the NYC Unconference like? You were there yesterday. Spill the beans.
Yeah.
That's what we
Uh,
say in the Britain.
yeah, we say that too here in America. First of all, shout out to Tim Kotzman and Ed Julien, and then shout out to Adrian, who's running the tech behind it. It was a very well-ran conference. As we talked about before this call, it was a very nice, intimate setting. There's only probably about 250 to 300 people there, but it was primarily, who you think is going to be there was there for the Bitcoin Treasury space. Of course, not everybody was there, but I would say 80% of the big names were there. Metaplanet wasn't there. The Nakamoto team wasn't there, but pretty much everyone else was there. So it was really nice to see people face to face and really get to bend their ears a little bit off things that are not public on X to really get their sentiment. To be honest, everybody is very bullish, not in the hype side kind of way, but rather just excited about helping shape the financial future of tomorrow. So it was not exuberant, it was not depressed at all. It was very even keeled, and that's what I like. I myself am I try to be a very stoic person when it comes to investing, and so it was just really nice to uh, go beyond the emotions and into kind of how can we build together, which was very exciting.
Okay, cool. I guess maybe it's slightly easier when you're running the company and you're not uh, owning the shares in the same way as a retail investor to be.
The it can cut both ways, right? Like Andrew himself has, I mean, of course he has Bitcoin, but the rest of his assets are in Bitcoin treasury companies. So it's fair to say that these guys have even more skin in the game than the average retail investor. So, of course, it depends on the CEO. Like some CEOs don't, but I can at least according to what Andrew says, most of his net worth is in Bitcoin and smarter web. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And what what are the sort of there's a few kind of upcoming things that we're speculating about. There was some speculation, was it last week, about acquisitions, although Jesse kind of put a dampener on that, saying they're not actively pursuing anything at the moment. But acquisitions, potential LSE uplisting, maybe even for FTSE 250 qualification or anything else. What are the future things that you're excited about?
Yeah, I definitely think that the right track for them, and I'm sure they've already kind of telegraphed that that's the direction that they're going, especially through the hiring of their new CFO, who has FTSE 250 experience, I think. Is that that's the general direction you want to go. You're starting off at these, call it lower liquidity, smaller markets, just to build momentum. But as you build that momentum, as your trading volume increases, you want to obviously play in a bigger. You go from the pond to a bigger ocean. So that makes a lot of logical sense. Now I don't know what that evolves on the back end, but yeah, I just rely on the leadership to try to execute on that. I don't have a particular time frame. Everything's very market driven, and I definitely don't know the regulatory space in the UK. So again, I would never speculate on a timeline, but that is the general direction that I think they're going to go.
Okay, cool. Um, and yeah, so just talking about the hire of the CFO, there were a few things announced in a short sort of space of time. New CFO, the change of auditor, um, what was that? I can't remember what the third one was now.
They got a new marketing manager as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think there was another. Anyway, and so the my first thoughts were okay, great, that's prepping for LSE uplisting. But then uh, Borja from Roxxon said, uh, or they put out a tweet saying this is actually structuring for larger capital deals for bigger equity raises, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, in regards to like uplisting, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like as you get uplisted, you get more access to the capital markets, and so that increases liquidity, that allows us to play this accretive dilution game even further. So yeah, that's definitely in line with the thesis of just trying to get bigger and bigger.
Sure. And how was it actually meeting Andrew in person? Um, and how was he received in general, if you noticed?
I think Andrew and Jesse are what you see online in the regards that they're very humble, very dedicated, not pretentious, and just yeah, very hardworking people. The what I saw online was exactly what I got in person. There was no Jekyll and Hyde impression. It was just yeah, they're soft spoken, as I said to Andrew. Um, when I first saw him on stage at Bitcoin Vegas event earlier of this year in February, there was he was on a panel with quite a few other Bitcoin treasury companies, and every single one of them were saying, "Oh, like we're trying to get to 1%. We're trying to be like the largest this, largest that." And Andrew was just kind of the last one who says, like, "Hey, yeah, we're just going to work hard to be in the top 10, and hopefully we get there." And he was just very soft spoken. So at first, I was a little bit. That's actually one of the initial reasons why I wasn't so keen on Smarter Web initially. It was because like, oh, like he's so soft spoken that I felt like he lacked ambition. But really, what he is I told him this. I said, you speak quietly but carry a big stick, which I think is actually much more impactful in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and so for you, are treasuries kind of a long-term conviction play, like you're looking way into the future rather than the day-by-day share price kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's been some discussion in the UK scene about what Bitcoin treasuries become. Um, do you have any thoughts on that kind of thing?
I mean, I'm not in the UK, so I guess why don't you share with me some of the things that they said, and then maybe we can dissect it.
So, I think a lot of CEOs and stuff have kind of said, well, that's something to deal with in 20, 30 years kind of thing.
Hmm.
It's the usual thing of, oh, they're going to be the Bitcoin bank or, that kind of stuff. I was just wondering
Yeah,
whether you had any thoughts on
yeah.
what they're going to do with this massive stack of Bitcoin.
Uh, I think that the biggest players are going to be Bitcoin banks. Um, the way I think about it is there's three levels of Bitcoin treasury companies. Level one is you're a company owner, you're a Bitcoiner, and you simply realize that the cash you're sitting on is a melting ice cube, and therefore you convert a certain portion of that cash pile into Bitcoin. Now, that could be a combination, or that could be either a private company, in which obviously you cannot play the creative dilution game, or a public company. But if you're a public company, but you do not have a massive following and you're always floating at or even below one MNAV, then you're kind of stuck in what I call level one. Level two is you are definitely a publicly traded company. You also have some sort of retail investor base that believes in your execution and vision to reward you with something that's above one MNAV so you can play the accretion dilution game. Level three is you are everything I mentioned in level two, but you have a certain size of stack, of a Bitcoin stack. And now you are an innovator who's tapping the institutional markets, relying now primarily on the institutional markets as your shareholder base rather than the retail base. So definitely MSTR is in that bucket. Metaplanet is pretty much transitioned there, if not in the next at least couple of months, but pretty much there. But then everybody else is scrambling to try to get there. So
And what's your view on multiple BTC TCs in a single jurisdiction? Like, do you think
yeah.
a jurisdiction can cope with multiple?
Uh, a couple things. One, it depends on the size of your capital markets. So obviously, if you look at the U.S., we have the deepest capital markets with, I don't know, $30 trillion of uh, equities and blah, 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 blah. So it's very deep, and therefore you can differentiate yourself very well. And I don't know if you had a chance to watch the live stream from the Unconference yesterday, but Saylor's initial speech is effectively that um, the fixed income market is 300 trillion, and that pretty much is that's $300 trillion of dying capital. And so Bitcoin treasury companies done well and issuing preferreds can provide a lot of services to that. So it's going to be many decades, if not in like even in our lifetimes, where that will be saturated. And we're using a baseball analogy. There's 9 innings in baseball. We're at the top of the first inning. Like we're like the game hasn't even begun. Like maybe maybe MSTR is bottom of the first inning. Metaplanet is like in the middle of the first inning, but I mean we have such a long runway.
Okay, cool. And I know you said you don't kind of get into timeline predictions or price predictions and stuff, but when Andrew and Jesse were on your show last week, and to anyone who hasn't watched it, go and watch it. It was great. Um, they mentioned Andrew gave you his gut feeling, even though you didn't ask for it, of that SWC would get into 250 before strategy got into the S&P 500. Um, I was kind of thinking strategy would get in next time round. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I mean, that's very hard to tell simply because it's the S&P 500 is more on a good old boys secret committee level rather than a metric level. So I don't know how that process works. I doubt most people know how that works. So again, I really I very rarely think too much about anything in 1 year time frame. I just know that like Bitcoin is going to go up. We're going to get in. It's just a time of when. So I don't really sweat the details on timing per se.
Sure. I guess that's bullish for SWC because it doesn't have that committee decision. It's just purely done on the
Yeah.
metrics.
And exactly. And to be honest, like if you were a SWC investor and not a MSTR investor, you'd actually prefer them not to get in, right? Because if MSTR gets in, then immediately that's, I don't know, 15, $20 billion of capital. That, what do you think? MSTR is going to do with that? They're going to smash buy Bitcoin. That's going to jack up the price so that our average price per Bitcoin that we acquire is at a higher rate. So, you know, but at the end of the day, what's good for Bitcoin raises all tides. But yeah, if you're just thinking about on a shareholder perspective, you would actually not want MSTR to get in the S&P 500 before you do. You know?
Yeah, I think most of our investor base probably are in MSTR as well. So
Sure.
it's kind of not all of them. Okay, cool. I think that's kind of me with questions. Is there anything you wanted to add? Oh no, sorry, one more. I think I read online that you sort of have online marketing experience.
Oh.
And so I was just thinking, have you got a message for the SWC community about the things that they could be doing to help
Mm,
kind of grow the community, spread the word, get more people
mm,
in, that kind of thing?
mm. Yeah, that's a great question. It's not just the SWC community. I think it's the entire Bitcoin Twitter sphere is um, because Bitcoiners are very logical people. They rarely think about marketing, building a social base, because that's very qualitative. And if it's not something that we can easily analyze through numbers, we don't emphasize. However, um, however, we're in the attention economy. There's a very specific reason why this current AI boom started off from a paper written by Google that's called Attention's All You Need. And so with attention comes the capital, whether that is for yourself personally as a personal brand, or if you're a Bitcoin treasury company, you want to increase your reach to therefore get more investors, or if you're a Bitcoin service company where you want to get more people to buy your products or services, everybody needs to have a distribution platform. And so with that, you need to know how to play the social media game. And so I have a wide range of experiences, but one of them was I had my own investment education company for 2.5 years. During that process, it was effectively getting an MBA in online marketing. And so, if you think about it, right, like online marketing in general, you can think of it as a funnel. That's because the statistics are you need about 8 to 14 touches for somebody to like each touch point is like you seeing their content, right? It's like and obviously the height, the ticket, the product, the more touches you need to gain that person's trust. And so social media is the top of the funnel, and then you need to effectively win them over to like, oh, like I see their content, to like saying, oh, like I actually like what this guy says. Like after I see his content a couple times, I'm gonna follow them. Okay, then you lead them down to the middle of the funnel. So for me, I'm building something called the Bull Standard Academy, which is actually to help Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin content creators and Bitcoin treasury companies increase their social outreach on X. Now that's in beta right now where I'm still incubating it and I'm just building that out. But that's the middle of the funnel where you get to learn the best practices because the algorithm changes. Matter of fact, the algorithm just recently changed where I'm scrambling to figure it out still. But I'm aggregating some of the best content creators in the space to share their knowledge. And then as we codify it and there's more analysis done and we get the results, then we're going to convert it into a course within the community, which you can access for free. And so that's kind of the middle of the funnel. But then the bottom of the funnel is, well, there's companies who's going to join that community and they're like, oh, I'm trying to learn it, I'm trying to implement it, but I don't have the time, I don't have the bandwidth. Maybe you can do it for me, or you can do one-on-one coaching, and that's more high ticket, right? And that's not isolated to me. That's going to be people who's already in the community contributing. They can make money that way. So That's what I'm building on my end because as you know, yes, I have a 14-year traditional finance background, but actually my specialty in the Bitcoin space is marketing and distribution. I created my X account a couple of years ago, but I only got active in October of last year, and so in that time span, I grew it to roughly 22,000 followers, which I ran it through Grok, and it's in the 99.9th percentile of growth and follower base. So that's my specialty. And if you're looking to increase your influence, not so much like for your own glory, but rather like you have something to say, you have a product, you want to talk about your investments to hopefully pump everybody's bags. That's a way to go where you increase your social outreach by learning how that game is played.
Okay, cool. So on a community level, are we talking about members of the community liking, reposting, replying, sharing with friends? I don't know, adding commentary, putting things in other communities, maybe? I don't know. What is that
Yeah,
good
that's a great
stuff?
question. That's so when I first entered this space, I was just like posting for fun, and it was gaining a good amount of traction. But like at first I was just cracking a lot of jokes, and then like I noticed some people were saying like, "Oh, like this guy's kind of a meme guy." I was like, "Well, I have more to say than just being a funny guy, right?" And so I was like, "Well, okay, like what do I really want to be known for?" Well, I just want to like provide a lot of like value. And if I'm already trying to learn from the space, why don't I just take the little bit of extra time to kind of distill what I'm learning? And so what I did is I call it borrowing leverage, right? So if there is a bigger account that um that creates good content, that's already like doing podcasts, that's already like showing up consistently, um to like get their message out, and you like their content and you're already studying it, then what I would do is just summarize that in my terms for other people. And inevitably, if that content, blows up, uh, oftentimes that person will actually retweet it themselves. And then if they really like you, they'll follow you back. And so that's how you like, it's kind of like a fish analogy, right? You're like a little guppy and you're just trying to like ride the waves of someone bigger. But inevitably, if they like you, like they're going to like add you in their group, right? And so that's exactly actually how Jesse and I became friends. Is he was on a podcast, and I wrote a thread that went super viral, and then he asked me to write another thread for something else he created, and I was like, oh, like cool, I'm happy to do it. And then yeah, we became friends that way. So if you're already doing the hard work of taking the time to study the space from people you admire, then like help winners win, right? Help them amplify the message. In return, they'll probably follow you back, and that's how you gain social clout, if you will.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, community members, you know what to do. Um, okay, just a question that's come in on the chat. Have you ever been asked to join a Bitcoin Treasury, um, and because you would be an asset? And if you weren't interested, why not? Why weren't you interested?
Thank you. That is a good question. I've had a few conversations. Um, well, first of all, I'm a Christian, so I think everything happens for a reason. Like one in particular fell through that I thought I was going to get, but I think in hindsight, everything happened for a reason. And just taking a step back from why that fell through, like, and having a little bit further distance, like I'm actually glad that that fell through simply because I didn't like certain things that was being done. But I also think that we're in this wild, wild west stage where just because it's a hot trend doesn't mean that you should jump onto everything. Matter of fact, I think it's much wiser to survive a bear market together. I mean, we're experiencing a bear market now despite a Bitcoin run. Just imagine like a Bitcoin bear market with a amplified Bitcoin Treasury MNAV compression market. That's going to be a bloodbath of epic proportion, right? Epic proportion. And so if that's the case, then unless you have an iron stomach and this this place, the Bitcoin Treasury company has amazing people that will help you ride through it. There's going to be a lot of deals that blow up, and a lot of people's reputations are going to get ruined. And for me, I don't really care about money that much. Not that like I'm a giga multi-millionaire. It's just that I care about my reputation more than anything, right? Well, not as much as like my relationship with God and my mom, and my friends, but that's like besides that, that's my most important thing. So it's better to be the tortoise as opposed to the hare, where you get to observe best practices and using another baseball analogy is waiting for the fat pitch so that when you swing, you make sure you swing for the home run rather than just take everything that was offered your way.
Sure, and assuming there is another Bitcoin bear market, it'll be the strongest that survive, right? It's going to
Correct. Correct.
weed out quite a lot of them.
And that was, to your question earlier about what are some takeaways from the Bitcoin conference. Uh, there have been so many conversations that I had where it's like, dude, all these guys are obviously seeing all these deals, and they're just like, there's so many bad deals, so many bad deals. Everybody's trying to make a quick buck, and it's only those who are patient, strategic, which I bucket Jesse and Andrew on them waiting for the fat pitch. They're not just taking any money that's thrown their way. That is the winning strategy. You don't want to be swinging for the fences and trying to be the gold medal winner. Like I heard another CEO talk about like they actually have a bronze medal strategy where it's like, hey, as long as like I'm in the game and not get blown out, that's actually how you win in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Saylor reiterated that yesterday as well, didn't he? About taking the right money. It's easy.
Correct.
The money that comes to you is the money you don't want. It's the money you got to go out and work for. The
Yes, I'm glad you brought up that point because yeah, he named off like Three Arrows Capital, FTX, Celsius. Every single one of them pitched him, but I'm glad that he didn't take those deals.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Peter. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I hope we keep in contact and I'll keep liking and sharing your stuff because it's good.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Shout out to the Smarter Web community. I'm a part of many communities on X, but you guys have the best attitude. You guys are very positive despite the recent price action. And if you are willing to stomach it, you will get rewarded in the end, I believe. But yeah, you just got to be patient and believe that Andrew and Jesse are doing everything in their power to really drive shareholder value, which I firmly believe.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter.
Nice talking to you, James. Thank you, everyone.